Good morning. My name is Reverend Leslie, and I'm one of your senior ministers along with Reverend Karin. And we're so excited to have you with us. We're so excited to have you with us. All the campuses of New Vision Center are rocking and rolling and cranking along, and it's such a joy. We've been spending a year working on, half a year so far, on our annual theme of the spiritual hero's journey. And the idea here is that each one of us is the hero in our own spiritual hero's journey, going through this beautiful cycle of claiming something new for ourselves, opening up to the sense of possibilities, building skill sets and teams and opportunities, and building up our confidence so that we can tackle the big change, whatever that is, whatever big thing we've called into our lives. So far, recently, we've talked about the idea of letting go of the idea that we are flawed. We're flawed people, because a flaw is an inherent piece of damage that can't be fixed. Like when you think about a diamond with a flaw, letting go of that idea that we can seek to up-level our behavior, to be more skilled in our behavior and in our interactions with one another and in our ability to walk out our spiritual path. But that doesn't mean we're fixing a flaw, because we're each made perfect in the likeness and image of infinite spirit. And then last week, Reverend Karen Russo came up here and she talked about something wonderful is happening in our lives right here, right now, right in the middle of whatever we think is the big mess of the day. I know, I kind of feel like that about it sometimes too. Really? Have you seen my mess? Are you sure? And yet, with the advantage of a couple of weeks' time, or sometimes even a couple of days' time, we can look back at that thing and be like, this was the petri dish of my greatness. The petri dish of my greatness. The things that come out of my mouth sometimes. And so today's talk is called I Am a Center for Spiritual Living. So New Vision Center, we call it New Vision Center, we call it NVC. Its whole big, long, fancy name is New Vision Center for Spiritual Living. Which is why we call it New Vision Center. It takes fewer breaths. And yet, we are part of this greater organization called Centers for Spiritual Living. And I think we can lose touch with that sometimes. We're so much of a family and an entity of ourselves that we forget that there are 360 some other centers for spiritual living, communities for spiritual living, all over the world, 5 continents. We have centers for spiritual living or teaching chapters for spiritual living that are in the process of growing into education formats that teach this teaching. And it's exciting, isn't it? I get so excited. So this past weekend, I had the opportunity to go to Golden, Colorado, and I spent a little bit of time at our home office. Now, part of what I did was in Golden was to celebrate the academic graduation of our own Jeff Hargis from that portion of ministerial school. Stand up, Jeff. We need all that applause because after the academic graduation comes capstone testing and sitting for panels and all these things before we get to be licensed and be called Rev. So we need that applause to drive us through the last couple steps. It hasn't been that long since Karin and I did it, and we remember how much we fed on that. So while I was at home office, I spent some time, there was a lower level in the home office building right outside of where we keep the archives, which is the archives of Ernest Holmes and the original teachers of Science of Mind. And there's this beautiful wall with these wonderful plaques that are floor to ceiling, and they have a quote on them from when Ernest Holmes dedicated the Whittier Church in 1958. And there is a button you can push a little bench you can sit on, and you push the button and you sit on the bench, and it's his voice recorded talking from this speech. And at the end of this talk, I'm actually going to do a dramatic reenactment of this recording, because the quality is what you would expect from recorded in a little plastic recorder under the lectern when someone was, in 1958, when someone was dedicating a church. So it's difficult to hear, but we do have the transcript of it. And in this message, he just stops cold in the middle and has a complete mystical experience with hundreds of people watching him, which must have been so startling. Can you imagine to have this deeply personal experience with all of these people watching him? And what he'd been talking about before he leans into this cosmic experience is what he thinks can happen when every single individual becomes a center for spiritual living, a mystical being in life, and when those energies come together, how much the world can change. And that led him into this moment. So fair warning, there will be crying. Every time I talk about this, I cry. New folks, just get used to it, we cry. It's part of the deal. So what came together between witnessing Jeff's beautiful graduation ceremony, hearing once again this message from Ernest Holmes from Whittier Church, and everything that I learned at home office was this question we've been talking about: can I let go of the idea that I'm flawed? Can I let go of the idea that there's something wrong? Can I let go of the idea that I've made a mess, or there is a mess and I can't clean it up and it isn't savable? Can we move from that question? It's a good question. But can we move from that into the question, can I be a mystical, conscious center for spiritual living right here in my own self? Can each of us be that all the way and own it? And so that's the question for this talk. So just a little one. Just an easy talk today. Just an easy one. So when we look at this spiritual hero's journey, it's not a surprise that this is a complicated talk, because look where we are at, right? The flames are looming. The tentacles are grabbing for us. I like both definitions of that drawing. We are entering the time of death and rebirth. What if what is dying here is our old idea of our own limitations and our own brokenness, and we're being reborn into this conscious expression of God in everything we do and everything we be? What if that's what's happening at the bottom of that cycle? And if so, we better get our heads straight right now, because like I said, those tentacles, they're getting close. In my estimation, we have to do two things if we are going to embrace life as a center for spiritual living. And the first one is to embrace our own divine nature, to embrace it all the way. Now, the anchor for me for this, you're welcome to borrow it if it is helpful for you. The anchor for me for this is where in the Declaration of Principles, or sometimes we call them the what we believe statements, Ernest Holmes wrote, "We believe that the highest God and the innermost God is one God, and anyone may become a revealer of truth who chooses to live in close proximity with indwelling spirit." Anyone, everyone who chooses to live in close proximity with indwelling spirit. So how do we choose that? What does that mean, to choose to live in alignment, in consciousness, in relationship with indwelling spirit? In my estimation, again, it has two things. It seems like everything has two things today. The first one is to choose to live in communion with spirit. This is not new news. This is meditation. This is prayer, right? Not one of y'all has not heard you should be meditating. Even new folks, I'm willing to bet, if you have Instagram, you've been told you should be meditating. But just when there's a problem, right? No. But just when we have time, right? No. But just like every day, right? Yes. Yes. We joke every day whether we need it or not, because we always need it. I'm still waiting for the day when I don't need it. I suspect it's not coming. But I'm in the habit now, so we're okay. So there's the choosing to commune with the divine every day, every day, every day, every day, twice a day if you feel like it, every day. And then there's the doing the personal work side of it, the processing our emotions, the having the difficult conversations, the setting the boundaries, the being willing to make the unpopular statement. Those two pieces together, communion with the divine and doing my work. As we bounce back and forth between them, we notice what's happening to my hands. They get closer. They get closer to each other because we are living in alignment with indwelling spirit. We notice we don't have to jump this far to deal with our emotions anymore because bit by bit they come closer to the whisper of indwelling spirit within us, that place of the Most High on the inside where God talks to us as us. They come together. And that becomes a basis for understanding our own mystical nature. And then we've got to really embrace it. So if there is a place in you, as there has been in some daily, there is a place in me that says things like, yeah, but other people are mystical. I'm just going to settle for being okay. Isn't it egotistical to talk about being a mystic? Isn't that for people who just graduated from ministerial school? I mean, I surely couldn't be a mystic. If there's any part of you that's doing that dance, that false humility, pushing God away because I'm somehow not enough or not worth it dance, because that's what that is, let's be honest, that's what that is. Shake it off. It's a lie. It's a lie. Reverend Karin is fond of using, here in the center, we can sometimes use the prophet and the pastor model to just describe what we do and how we do it. And definitely in this model, Reverend Karin is the pastor. That is the one of us that is the most likely to be bedside in a crisis, holding a hand, hearing you. Not because I can't do it, but she's just real good. Just saying, she's real good at it. And I have at times really resisted this because then that puts me in the prophet position, or what we might call the mystic position, where it's sort of more my place to be big picture in giving talks like this, training the practitioners, seeking this mystical space. And I resist it, not so much because I'm not that, because I'm here to tell you I claim every ounce of that. I am a mystic. Not a question in my mind. I think I resist it because so is Karin. And I don't want people to get the idea that she's not. And I have my pastoring parts to me too. And I don't want people to get the idea that I don't have that aspect as well. But here's the thing. I think people think, feel free to disagree with me. I think people think that I can stand up here and say, I am a mystic, because I've done 700,000 years of schooling on this, and I have several pieces of paper that make me qualified. No. I mean, yes, those things are true, but no. I am a mystic because I have chosen to live in close proximity with indwelling spirit, and I have chosen to do my work on my own emotional things every time they bubble up. Oh, and y'all, they bubble up. If you think you have to wait to call yourself a mystic until it doesn't bubble up anymore, oh, honey, sugar muffin, this day may not come. We better just claim it now. My former sister-in-law, Jossie, this story cracks me up. 108 years ago and 3 jobs ago, I was studying Reiki. And I was telling my sister-in-law about it because, that's what you do. You tell your friends and siblings what you're doing. And she was like, oh, I love Reiki. Reiki's so cool. I see a Reiki healer. And I say, I'm studying that. I'm going to become a Reiki master. And she was like, are you kidding me? You see how fast that flipped? Like, what do you mean? Well, what would make you think you can be a healer? Like, well, you think that other lady can be a healer, you pay her money. Yeah, but I know you. Don't we do that to our own selves? That other lady can be a mystic, but I know me. I know what goes on the inside of me. Made in the likeness and image of indwelling spirit. Not made in the likeness and image of indwelling spirit, except for the icky parts and the parts that sometimes say things wrong or the parts that get upset with people. Made in the likeness and image of spirit, exactly as you are. The innermost God and the highest God and the innermost God is one God. One. Even the squidgy parts. Even the squidgy parts. So, turn and look at someone near you. Online campus, if you don't have someone with you, turn and look at a photo of someone you love. Just really look at them. And try and think, no, not God. No, not at all. It's laughable, isn't it? We can't do it because it's such an obvious, ridiculous lie. It's such an obvious, ridiculous lie. And if it's true that Karen, we are a Karen-rich culture, in case you hadn't picked up on it. We have many Karens. If Karen is one in the one, and if Nancy is one in the one, and if Gemini is one in the one, then I am one in the one. And so are you. There isn't anything else to be. So once we've got that sorted, good that we cleaned that up, right? Now we can think about the possibility of walking that out in real life out there. Because we can't do it while we're not owning it in here, right? But now that we've got it all sorted in here, I am a mystical center for spiritual living in here. Now as I walk out into my world, I have the capacity to be God in action out there. How do we do that? What does that look like? Well, here at New Vision Center, we've kind of honed in on a few ways that we like to be God in action out in the world. We say we reveal the power of love. We teach spiritual living and we live spiritual teaching. And how does that show up? The first one is Reverend Karen's klaxon bell of loving kindness. If you haven't heard about loving kindness, you haven't been around here very much. Give it 1 or 2 more talks. You're going to hear more about loving kindness because it's that important. Loving kindness in our own self-talk about ourselves. Loving kindness in our mind as other people wander through. And loving kindness as we interact with people in the world. A softness that allows people to be who they are and where they're at right in this moment, even when it's messy, even when it's imperfect, even when it's, my favorite phrase, unskilled behavior. Oh, I love that phrase. Loving kindness. It's the simplest thing in the world, but that does not mean it's easy. To hold someone in that soft place of assuming the highest intent from them, even if their actions don't feel like they resonate that with you right now. To know, I know that person. I know that person. That is a kind and good person. That is a smart and wise person. I do not understand their choice today, But somewhere under there is a reason that makes sense to them. And I don't have to agree with them to know that they are still kind and loving and good and wise person. And I can hold them in that soft space. Loving kindness. The second one is radical inclusivity, including every part of our own self, not trying to shove any part of ourselves in the closet or under the bed or chop it off or call it bad or hide it or mask it, so that we can then accept everyone we meet and everyone we see in that same energy of radical inclusivity. So some of that is easy, right? We all have our categories where it's easy. Like, I don't care what religion you grew up in. I don't care what religion you practice now. Cool, sweet. I don't care if you don't practice a religion. Cool, sweet. I don't care if you don't believe in God. I'm happy to tell you why I do, but cool. Right on. Not a trigger for me at all. I don't care what color you are. I want to know about how you grew up. That's interesting. I want to hear about your life and your values, but the color of your skin, other than like it makes you look not like a transparent fish like I do most of the time, mildly interested in that idea. For me personally, I don't care who you love. Other than that, I think I kind of do care who you love because I get really excited about the idea of love and I get very clappy and hoppy. It's just true. And those things are probably pretty true for the majority of this community. And there are the people who think differently than we do. Maybe the people who vote differently than we do. Support different political ideas or legislation than we do. And all of a sudden, they're idiots and they should die. They hate America. Have you noticed that literally every party at this point hates America, according to somebody? It's not like I'm telling you I think it's easy. I think the funniest thing I ever heard, I personally identify kind of as a more socially progressive person, and the funniest thing I ever heard was when my dad was like, so you accept literally everyone, and you are tolerant of everything except intolerance? Busted. Busted. How do we meet the energy of intolerance as a center for spiritual living? Here's a hint. I already gave it to you in the last point. We meet it with loving kindness. It's the only doorway through that has any chance of making any impact. You know what doesn't work? You're stupid, and I'm going to give you 14 reasons why. I'm fairly certain that one has never changed a heart. Has never opened a mind. But it's a challenge for us, isn't it? It's a place for us to work. Loving kindness, radical inclusivity, and the third one is being a stand for good in the world. Being a stand for good in the world. Choosing to focus on good in the world. One thing Ernest Holmes said, and I just love it, is that he said, show me someone who is for something and against nothing, and I will show you the next Jesus. And what he meant by that was, show me someone who will focus on what they want instead of just tearing down what they don't want, and I will show you the next enlightened being. Breathe and let that sink in. Being a stand for good in the world. Being a stand for peace in the world. Being a stand for inclusion in the world. Being a stand for loving kindness in the world. Being a stand for knowing that it's possible in this world right now. Not just in our lifetime, but now. Now. We can't wait for there to be no messiness to do this work. We need to do it now. We can't wait until there's a weekend where there wasn't a mass shooting to do this work, because there hasn't been one in a lot of weekends, y'all, including this one. We need to do this work now as a community that has chosen to live on the green, growing edge of consciousness. We have to, must stake our claim as a center for spiritual living and love everyone, no matter what. Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it? We are the ones that signed up for this. We turned on this YouTube channel. We walked through these doors. Something in our soul said, woo, sign me up for the Peace Love Army. And here we are. More than half a century after Ernest Holmes stood at a lectern much like this. He was a little short guy, kind of my size, little rotund, kind of like me. And he thought he was just showing up to dedicate a new church. And then something else happened. He said, let me tell you this. There are many wonderful religions in this world. We are not better than the others. We are not more spiritual. We're not more evolved. We are not more anything other than this one thing. We have co-joined our consciousness with the eternal verite of the universe, that everlasting and eternal Father of all life and Mother of all creation, forever begetting the only begotten, is begetting him in us right now. And that the word of our mouth is a word of truth in such degree as it emulates and embodies the truth that sanctifies the word to its unique service of healing, not only the sick, but the poor in heart. We are dedicated to the concept that the pure in heart shall see God here, that the meek will inherit the earth now, that every one of us in the secret place of the Most High, in the spirit of his own consciousness, has the secret of the eternal, the everlasting, the almighty, and the ineffable. God and I are one. And I see you doing this. And I see you uniting in one great hymn of praise, one great union of effort, one crescendo of song, and one enveloping light of consciousness. I see it. Oh God, the veil is thin between. We do mingle with the hosts of heaven. I see it, and I shall speak no more. What we know from the historians that captured this is that he fled from the stage, overwhelmed, having seen what he saw and felt what he felt in front of all those people. And as soon as he could get out of the building, he did. But then he kept his young friend and driver up most of the night, talking about what happened to him. And we're lucky that George Bendall wrote quite a lot about what they shared that night. And he quoted Ernest as saying, I actually had the feeling that I was part of the stars, that I was part of everything, that I was part of the whole movement, the push and pull of the universe, but with a greater sense of self-awareness. And he went on to say there was a complete and total recognition that there is no death, nothing but eternal life, no sense of any mistake in the past, only an instantaneous recognition of this experience and expression as an individual. This experience and expression as an individual center for spiritual living, surrounded by the completely engaged individual centers of God consciousness that come together to create a community that we call a center for spiritual living. But it only works when we all are willing to take that stand for ourselves and to hold one another in this precious container of acceptance and loving kindness. So it's an easy thing we're asking of you. It's deep and it's challenging, but it's worth it. It's worth it. So here is the invitation. This is sort of the ultimate always invitation of New Vision Center. To be a yes for claiming your own divine nature and walking it out in life. To letting fall away any excuses that hold you in your smallness. And when you catch yourself in your smallness, as we all will 57,000 times a day, we let it fall away again, and we remember who we are. No death, no mistakes, no history. Just one in the one of cosmic expansion. I am a yes for this. Are we a yes for this? Yes. Are we a yes for this? Yes. And so it is. And so let's take this even deeper in prayer together. So good it is to recognize that in this moment, right here, right now, God is present as every beloved consciousness in this space. As every being at the Tatum campus, as every beloved participating through our online campus, as everyone in the future, whoever watches this message and steps up and says, yes, I choose that for my life. So good it is to recognize that from that space of being a center for spiritual living, we know that there's more than enough of every needed and wanted thing. More than enough money, more than enough health, more than enough energy, more than enough time, more than enough love, more than enough good. That we can be in that place of infinite loving kindness and acceptance because there's not a lack of anything and nothing could take away from our good. So powerful it is to stand in the resonant love of infinite spirit itself and to feel it reflecting back from our fellow community members as each one of us say, yes, I choose to live a mystical life. I choose to live a powerfully loving life. I choose to live a life that is so imbued with the power of spirit that when I walk by people on the sidewalk, they feel the healing power of God, even though they may never know why. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we are a beneficial presence on this planet. It's what we are here for. We are made for a time such as this, and we are being called forth powerfully and beautifully to be our God selves. And so I trust that whatever concern may have been on your heart when you walked in the sanctuary, I stand in absolute alignment, recognizing that Spirit is healing it right now. In your body, in your heart, in your mind, in your life, in your pocketbook, it matters not. We turn it over and let infinite spirit heal us as it does. We claim that healing. We allow it to work in us. And we come together to say powerfully and beautifully, and so it is.